Welcome back to the Blueprint to Ultra podcast with your hosts, Steve Epifano and Jeff Winchester. Our goal with this podcast is to help you put together your own plan for your next Ultra. We do this by interviewing a variety of guests that range from back of the pack to elite runners that share their own experience for all of us to learn from. Super excited to have our next guest on the podcast, and she's in the West Coast studios. She is coming fresh off her second place female at the brutally hot Angeles Crest 100 miler as a solo runner. That's right, a solo runner, no pacers, no crew for her 29-hour finish. We all know that ultra sign-up isn't the be-all, end-all, but a quick look at her resume shows that she is the real deal with races ranging from 50K to multiple 100-mile finishes. She also happens to be the aunt of the director of my documentary, Oh No, a Cocodona 250 Story. Had to throw in the shameless plug there. We are really interested into diving into her faith, determination, and what she calls robot mode. With that, please welcome Liz Clarke to the show.
Thank you. Awesome.
Liz, thanks so much for joining us. Steve, we're going to just go ahead and make the obvious. As you said, the West Coast studios. And so about a week ago, we tried to record this episode. We had some technical issues and we changed some things. Fortunately, you guys only live 30 minutes apart. So Liz decided that she would be brave and join us in Steve's house or the West Coast studio. And so super grateful for that. So Liz, thank you for being flexible, adaptable, and hanging out with us today. And for those who are watching us on YouTube, that would explain why both of them are sitting side by side, as opposed to seeing three different, screens and stuff. So again, so excited to talk to you and learn more about you. So let's kind of get going kind of where we were, when we tried to do this before. And so I want to start off like we do every time, just kind of talking about your background and how you got into ultraing in the first place. And so I do know that you ran track and cross country in high school and discovered that the mile was your event. And then after college, you ran half marathons and triathlons. And during the pandemic is when you discovered the ultra running world, if you will, when everything kind of just shut down. And so let's kind of start there. How did you find ultras in the pandemic? And maybe tell us about maybe your first ultra race.
Yeah, so my husband and I were signed up in 2020 for the Boston Marathon and Ironman Arizona. Boston was like 2 weeks after the pandemic started, so obviously that wasn't happening. And then Ironman was going to happen. It was going to be a shortened bike for whatever reason, but we decided to try 3 loops instead of 6. I don't know, whatever. But it got canceled 10 days before.
Oof.
So we decided to defer to St. George in 2022. And in the meantime, my friend Brittany, who had done, we supported her in her first 100 miler, which was during the pandemic. She was all trained up and she did a solo 100 miler. So she got me into the trail. She was like, hey, the trails are open. Like, go ahead and maybe like try a 50K, I think at first she was like, do the 100 mile with me. I was like, hold on. But I did a 50K. My first one was one of Kira Henninger's races, Running Is Not Closed. It was in December of 2020. And I got a little lost, as I tend to do, even on the local trails sometimes. And I ran like 34 and a half miles. I rolled my ankle like 3 times, but it was fine. And I think I would have ended up placing in that race except for getting lost. But the extra mileage gave me the confidence to then go for the higher distance and ramp up pretty quickly after that.
That's awesome. So one of the things, we got about that far, like when we tried to do our recording last time, right? And so as we were just kind of figuring out what to do and everything, we talked to you a little bit more about just your life and everything that was going on. And then I actually looked back at some of the original notes that you sent us to in the email that you sent. And so I kind of want to pivot a little bit because I think part of your story is worth sharing, I think, with our audience and everything. And you ran the Bryce Canyon 100 miler in 2024. And you mentioned in your email, and you also kind of touched on this a little bit after the technical issues we had, right? That this race meant a lot to you because it was also the 10-year anniversary of your sobriety. And so can you expand on that a little bit? Because what I've learned about you since then is that this has played a huge role in who you are and has defined you. And so I don't want to kind of just bypass that and just ignore that because I think it defines you and kind of how you perform so well in the races and probably how you approach difficult things in life. So can you expand a little bit on your story there?
Yeah. So I was originally not going to do that race. I was going to do some sort of hard rock qualifier. It was my 4th 100 mile. And so my friends, though, were doing like the 50 miler and some other races in Bryce Canyon. And, they invited me and I saw that there was a 100 mile race. And then I looked at the date and I said, oh, obviously I have to do this. 10 years, 100 miles, It's got to be done. So yeah, that race, as much as my husband who was coaching me was mad that I let a female pass me in the last 2 miles, it was not about that for me. I was just soaking in the experience. My friends came after their races, one had DNF'd the 100 and some others had finished the 50. And they came the 2 miles up the hill and were walking down the hill with me, which is super cool. But yeah, that race was all about, sharing my story. I wore my 10-year chip on my pack and
Nice.
just shared it with whoever I could. So that was super cool.
That's awesome. So how has your journey through sobriety kind of impacted just your, I guess, your life and like your ability to kind of endure difficult things?
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, I should back up to why I drank. I was very shy growing up and very awkward. Still awkward, but I'm embracing it now. But so I started drinking in college as kind of part of also figuring out my faith, living as the world did and doing, the things that everyone else
Mhm.
around me was doing. And but it turned into like, oh wow, I'm really like free to be myself when I'm drinking, not knowing,
Mhm.
that's not really who I am. I'm just, being more outgoing, I guess. So, and then after that, it kind of turned into a crutch for me. It was, when I needed to be relaxed, when I needed to be social, when I needed to celebrate, it was just like everything.
Mhm.
And I'm very stubborn, which I think helps me in the races. I will get that buckle. But, I did things like giving up alcohol for 40 days for Lent. And then I went to a club and somebody didn't want their drink, which was my favorite drink. They put it in front of me like, do you want this? And I said, no, I'm doing this thing. So, I think the stubbornness, it came out there as well. But that also kind of made me think like, oh, I don't have a problem. Like I can
Mm.
stop it if I want to, but I just didn't want to.
Mm.
And then I was training for my first Ironman in 2013. And I was supposed to be doing a bike ride on Sunday or Saturday, I think. And Friday night, I drank a lot and I went to a party and I drank more. And I just, I woke up on on the couch with my beard spilled on the computer. And I could not even think about pumping my tires. I was like, absolutely not.
Mm.
So, yeah, that weighed on me. Like it was like a literal weight that I had
Mhm.
the whole weekend. I decided to, well, I went to church and my husband was away at a men's retreat. And I had, well, that was the next year. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. But the next year, after I had kind of, confessed that to him and gotten into Celebrate Recovery at my church, I
Mhm.
went there under the disguise of maybe they need a drummer, which they did, but we call that denial. I need to be here. I tried to limit my drinking to be socially drinking, which, never really worked.
Mhm.
I,
Mhm.
had rules and I followed them, but I was always like looking at everyone's drink level. When can I have my second? Because that's what I'm doing, but it's going to be the highest alcohol that I can have and before any food and, just craziness. But the next year, I decided to put in a prayer request at church for wisdom from alcohol abuse. And how it ended up, I had to like go to the back and put it in. And by the time I got back to my seat, I decided to give up alcohol for a year.
Nice.
And, 3 months in, I was thinking, yeah, I'm good if I never take another sip ever again. And then I was looking over my shoulder, like, who said that? Like, I want to have three right now. Like, what's
Yeah.
happening? So that was just like, just freedom.
Mhm.
Um, so in terms of like, the working out and everything, of course, I had the freedom to not have a hangover and not have to skip my training. But I think like just channeling that determination, that stubbornness, and a little bit of, I mean, of course, I'm working through some stuff out there,
Yeah.
but like in a better way than trying to forget it or trying to alter who I am by drinking alcohol.
So I want to just kind of continue there because when I set this question up, I said, about your sobriety and how it has influenced your ability to endure hard things. But I also know that that's not actually 100% accurate at all, because you also mentioned that, and you've actually touched on a lot, is that your faith is critically important to you. I mean, it is really probably the thing that has helped you with your sobriety and to getting through your sobriety. You mentioned even in our notes beforehand that you could not do these things even in running, right, without the gift of talent and your faith. And so to me, it's easy to say, well, we endure hard things and we've gone through difficult things in life and we've become sober or whatever. I mean, I've had my own struggles in life, right? We can look at that, or we can say there's something else in our life that's kind of propelled us forward and is actually what got us through it and stuff. And so how has your faith really driven you as an athlete, as a person, and kind of how it has propelled you forward? You said it gave you the talent. Let me say it again. You said you could not do these things in running without the gift of talent and your faith. So how has your faith helped you to do that? Not only just with your sobriety, but in the sport itself?
Yeah, gosh, so many ways. I guess like the initial thing that I thought of is I do have to be careful with making running my God.
Mm.
Um, I was even when I was running with some friends yesterday, I was talking about like if I start to think about what I can do, what pace I can do, who I can pass, then I'll trip on a rock.
Yep.
And then that is immediately humbling. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. Like maybe live in gratitude or something instead. So, a lot of my mantra out there is like, not my strength, but yours. And if I'm going to meet this goal, it's because you allowed me to do it. And when I'm feeling like, my legs are like, hello, can you stop? What are you doing? I'm just like, okay, God, you got to take over. All right. You've been there the whole time, but I really need you to like literally lift my legs and carry me the rest of the way now. So that's one of the things I love about endurance sports is you get to that spot where you're just like, I cannot physically do this anymore. And I'm like, all right, it's going to be my mind. It's going to be my faith just propelling me forward.
So, Steve, I know that you have mantras as well. I like, Liz, what you're saying is like you've personalized them to God and to your faith and everything. But like mantras are just huge in our sport. And I think if you can tag it to something that's important to you or to your faith, I think it kind of propels you forward. So, Steve, I can't remember. What is your mantra that you typically use out there?
Especially if it's something that's tied to something that's outside you. But mine is, just one more step. And and like Liz, that's my favorite part of the race is when you get to it, and I talk about it in my movie too, when you get to that spot where everything is in agreement that you should stop. Your mind, body, and heart are like, it's done, stop. And then for whatever reason, you just keep going forward. That's like my favorite spot. And it is something outside of yourself for sure.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think for those who are listening, sometimes, I mean, faith is a controversial topic, right? We're not going to try to proselytize anybody who's listening or whatever, but I think, it's an area that I think when you look at some of us, some very important to me in my life, it's, changed a lot about who I am and kind of the things I've gone through my own life as well. And Liz, for yourself. And I think if we can get to where we are okay with that, I think it kind of makes it a very comfortable topic for a lot of people. And I say that because, again, it is a difficult topic. Some people hate to even hear about it. And so we're not going to try to church up everybody today. It's not the goal. But there are different things that drive us to be who we are and that have shaped us in who we are. And I think your faith is just as important as somebody who doesn't have faith and how they kind of get through things as well. And so I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to have faith in yourself too. Like me out there, like I have to believe that I can do it. So.
That's right. Very good.
It's always good too to have somebody else that lets you know that they believe in you too. Like as coaches, Jeff and I, for the most part, a lot of our athletes, that's really all they need is somebody say like, okay, yeah, they do need the plan, they need the X's and O's, but it's somebody to sit down and say, you got this, you can do it. And, that's important too.
I like it. Well, so I want to talk about the AC 100. Like you said, it took place on August 2nd, so which is not too far ago, right? We are sitting just about 15 days or 2 weeks after that fact. And so I want to learn about it from you. Now, for those that don't know, the AC 100, according to the website, right, is one of the original point-to-point races in North America. And so the difference, though, this year is it was not a point-to-point race. And so instead of rattling off all those details about what the website says, because if you go look at the course description, you may get a little confused here, like I was when I first started. But it is located on the West Coast in the San Gabriel Mountains, correct? Still there?
Yep.
Still there. Perfect. The course got changed because of the Eaton fire, from what I understand. And I'm going to probably give this all over to you and Steve because you live over in the West Coast. I do not at all. But according to the website, this year's race did have a total of 20,600 feet of gain and loss because it's an out and back. So you kind of just reverse it all. And an average altitude, which again fascinates me for some of these races, but an average altitude of 6,900 feet for the race, which is pretty high because for those who don't live at that level, anything above 5,000 feet of altitude is when you begin to kind of get impacted by things like altitude sickness and stuff if you're not trained for to prep for it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well, I hope. But let's talk about the AC 100. So Steve, can you help me with this? Is there anything that I'm missing? Because it's a West Coast race.
Yeah, it was just a 50-mile out and back. So from the course profile that I looked at, so first of all, like, how were you feeling when you showed up, when you got there, when you're at the start line? What are your feelings kind of at the start line?
Yeah, I was excited, nervous. I mean, I had no doubt that I would finish. I've finished every ultra that I've ever started. I only have a DNF in a marathon. That's another story. Dehydration and passing out. No.
That'll
Mile
help you DNF.
24.8. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
Good stuff. The sun came in. It was like 72 degrees. So I've worked on my heat training a little bit. Yeah, and I was feeling pretty good. I was there with my friend Brittany. She is post-cancer. That's another awesome
Mm.
story, another good motivator for me to
Mm.
choose being strong out there. And yeah, I mean, I felt good. My mantras for that day were belief and patience.
Mm.
Belief. So Brittany had told me that ultra sign up predicted my time to be 28:35. And being a solo runner, I kind of did like a random calculation just to see like approximately when I would need my stuff when it would be dark.
Mhm.
So I put in a 17-minute mile just to put something in there. Well, when I calculated a 17-minute mile based on the length of the course, it was like 28:35. Almost exactly. And I went, huh, okay, well, maybe I should try for that. I mean, I was looking at some of the results from 2022, the out and back, and like my friends who are faster were doing like 30, 31 hours. And I was like, oh, okay, no way. But then I'm like, my mantra is belief. My mantra is not, think about what others have done. So I had that, that goal in mind. That was my A goal. And then I had like, several other goals as well. I wanted to go under 30 would be another goal. I wanted to go under 33 because that's the original time cutoff. The original course is more downhill. I actually felt better about the uphill because my blisters bother me on the downhill. So I was happy to go back uphill. I was like, sweet, this is my strength, Yeah, so I was happy about that. And then, of course, my overall goal under 36 because that was the cutoff.
Mm.
So yeah, felt good. And yeah, just belief, I've done a lot of training. My husband coaches me since I did Leadville in 2023. He's coached me for my hundreds. So 4 of them now. And he coaches me based on time. So a lot of time I have to go out to the trails and kind of guess what mile pace I'm going to be at. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone out there and done like exactly what I think I'm going to do.
Nice.
So I was like, huh. Even in Sean O'Brien race, I wanted to do the 100K under 15 hours. And I was struggling with blisters. I was using my poles as crutches, downhill, fire road, 15-minute mile, like just dying, right? Just like, can I get there already? My feet hurt. And I just told myself, why am I telling myself 15? Why don't I say 14:45 so I can get there faster? I finished in 14:46. Was like, no, I don't know if that's going to translate to 100 miles, but why don't I try?
Right.
Yeah. So, and then my other mantra was patience. So, rein it in so that I can be strong at the finish. Because my last 400s, I've death marched the last 20 to 25 miles for various reasons.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much everybody really.
Yeah.
Feels like it, right?
Because you feel so good at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Like I know, like I always say, 30 seconds before the start is the worst because that's when all the nerves come out, and then the gun goes off and everybody just takes off. So it does take, especially in like the 250s and stuff, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of actually like discipline to be able to rein yourself in and say, this is the plan, this is what we have to stick to.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it in a 250 either, because I think a lot of runners are going to look at a degradation of pace. And so they're going to think, okay, I'm going to run the first 5, 10, 20, 35 miles, whatever it is. And they're going to start coming with these paces that they feel like it's going to get slower and slower. And so they're like, maybe the first, let's call it 10 miles. 10 miles are going to be at a 9 or 10 minute or even 11-minute pace. And the next 10 is going to be maybe a 12. And so they start doing this degradation. But if I'm doing a 250, am I going to be banking time?
You shouldn't. It's not going to work.
Right? But everybody's like, let's bank time.
Yeah.
I want to walk. I know, Steve, I know we want to walk through the race, but
yeah. So we talked about the start a little bit. So from it looked like at the start, you go from Wrightwood right up a huge climb to Blue Ridge, which is 2,600 feet over like 5.5 miles. And you said there was patience there. Did you hold yourself back on there, or like how do you? And you say you like the climbing, so that's what I love climbing too. I like that more than the downhills. So what's that like? Is there a lot of switchbacks, or is it kind of straight up, or?
Yeah, there's a good number of switchbacks. I was just kind of like talking to people and kind of going my own pace. I was with Brittany for a little bit, which was cool. Yeah, I think there were times where I passed people when they were just going like really, really slow. So I had to have wisdom there not to, because it's like I don't want to pass somebody and have them pass me right back. That's embarrassing and not okay for them. It's annoying.
Yeah.
So I just tried to stick with some people, have some conversations. I found a friend who I know is a lot slower than me. I was like, perfect, let's stay here. So yeah, and even the climb, like you kind of go flat for like a block and then you're like uphill on like just the road. There's a guy playing accordion out in front of his house. Just enjoying the moment and just like, okay, I'm here. We're doing this. Like, let's get a slow start. I'm not in a hurry. I know once I get to the top of the hill, I have a nice drop to the first aid station. So I don't need to be doing my 17-minute mile right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve, if you could tell me kind of, because I've never seen this course. I mean, I've heard it's an incredible course itself. And so as y'all are talking about it, just even trying to understand visually what it looks like, because I live on the East Coast. Like I've said before, if we have any trails, they're flat and they may be either with sand or if it's in the woods, it will be technical and just straight up rooty. Like that's what we have.
Yeah.
You don't have any soft, buttery trails like I see on all of the Aerovipa videos when I am on YouTube. I got nothing like that.
Yeah. So is it single track trail where it goes over like for out here, most of the time, they're pretty non-technical unless you get up into those type of mountains.
Yeah. It's PCT.
Yeah.
When you get to the top of the Apron Trail. So it's like nice groomed single track, I mean, there might be some rocks every once in a while, but I mean, you do have to watch out for like the occasional tricky, little tiny thing that you can't see. But yeah, it's the whole thing I'd say is pretty runnable.
That's awesome.
That's good. Yeah. And then from there, you have another 2,600 feet in like 3.8 or like around 4 miles to what's called from the Vincent Gap to Mount Baden Powell.
Yep.
So again, are you still sticking with your strategy there, changing anything up, or still trying to stick to what your pace is and everything?
Yeah, still sticking to my pace. And I found another friend there who was doing her first 100, and she invited me to pass her because she knows I'm faster. I said, no, I'm good right here. This is perfect. Thank you.
That's a heck of 100 miles for the first 100 miler she's doing.
Yeah, she finished. I'm so proud of her.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd done Baden Powell training, and I think it helped me. I did ski hut like a few weeks before, and I was like, oh, this is, woo. So the climbs didn't feel that bad for me in the race, and taking them easier, using my poles strategically. I wanted to only use them on the uphills if I could, because later in the race, it's like I start to depend on them, and then I'm like walking where I could be running, So I just wanted to practice using them on the uphill. I got lucky with that. I had broken a pole like 3 weeks before the race. Just as I was like, I've had these for like 2.5 years, and I stuck it in the ground on the course and the training, and then picked it back up, and I had 2/3, and I was like, so Lucky provided me a new pair, which was amazing. So yeah, I had them actually in a bigger size because I'd been wanting a bigger size, so that helped as well. But yeah, just holding back, sticking to the plan.
So what mile mark are you guys at this point?
It's like 13.8.
Yeah, then that's a pretty big one up there. Yeah, and then from there, like your 13.8, it's like an up and down, but you're pretty much heading downhill for about 40 miles into like a little bit of a saddle when you hit your halfway mark.
Thinking I got to go up this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the way back. That's the uphill.
Yeah, that's the big one. So you're going about 40 miles downhill. So how's that feel like going downhill? Because I know there's a tendency to go a little bit faster because you are going downhill. And then for me, and I know like a lot of, because I coach a group and we're starting trail running, and a lot of them are like, how do I run downhill? Because they either go too fast or they're braking the entire time and just blowing their quads up. So how do you find that medium to where you're not running too fast and you're trying to like keep your quads fresh?
I guess it's maybe an advantage that I don't pick my feet up a lot when I run. Like typically, even when I'm running fast, like, I don't know, it's weird. I've tried to do like, heels to my butt, and like that just wastes my energy. So I pick my feet up enough to not kick the rocks. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I've just found like a good feel for, not, full send, but not breaking. I used to break a lot in high school when I had knee issues, and I was thinking that was protecting them, but like it wasn't, because you're like just forcing like the quad muscles to just So yeah, I don't know. I just tried to like breathe, keep my heart rate under control, and just constantly assess, like, am I going too fast? And like going slower than I think I need to, because I've been fooled before by how I feel. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, this is easy. I'm running a 10-minute mile like on the flat. I'm like, maybe I should, and I watch like anything that was even remotely uphill
Mm.
just
Mhm.
to, get those walking muscles. Cause I know if I run more than I did in training, I'm going to cramp up. So I
Mhm.
got to incorporate some walking.
What kind of grade is this on the downhill? Are we talking like an easy grade that you can easily just run? Because when you said braking, I'm imagining a little bit more of steepness to it because to prevent that. So,
Yeah.
is it a gradual downhill? Is that what you're looking at?
It's pretty gradual. Yeah. When you go into the aid station, it gets steeper. There's a couple of them like that. And then Baden Powell and Acorn are, pretty steep as well going on the way back. But this one was like a general, like a gradual
Hmm.
downhill. So pretty easy to rein in the pace.
Mhm.
So, how do you stop from braking? If you're like, for me, I don't run downhills. How do I prevent myself from braking? I have a theory, but
So,
I mean, that's as a coach.
yes,
Curious, as a runner, what would you tell me?
for me, when I tell my clients and I tell myself too, is especially on the gradual ones, because it's real easy to just like full send down the gradual ones and even the steeper ones. But it's counterintuitive, but you kind of lean into the hill a little bit. The more you lean back, the more your legs are going to extend out in front of you. And then that's where your skeletal system is going to take all the brunt of it instead of keeping your feet underneath your hips. And then that's where all your musculature is going to take the force of it. And I tell everybody to trust themselves and scan like 3 to 5 feet ahead of them. And then subconsciously, your feet are going to know where to go. And just as
Hmm.
long as you're keeping underneath of your hips, because I find kind of like you, when you say you try to pick you're like, hey, I'm pretty good at this trail running stuff, hit a rock or I fall on my face. It's, hey, like, look ahead of you. And anytime I'm starting to think about where to put my feet, that's when the issues come out. So you have to
Hmm.
really trust yourself, lean into the hill. Kind of as you lean into the hill going uphill, same thing, lean into the downhill a little bit. It does seem counterintuitive, but the more you lean back, for me anyways, the more you start to break.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me the challenge is that when I think in terms of leaning as I'm going downhill, that you're talking about still center mass, that my feet still need to be underneath my hips. But to me, to lean over is more of a top side approach, right? You're still
Yeah.
talking about the entire mass of your body leaning forward, like hips as well. But
Mhm.
when you're leaning back, your hips are also forward. And
Yeah.
so, and so either way, the issue is you got to get your hips forward, but also then the top part. So how do you then avoid constantly picking up speed?
That's a good question, Jeff.
Because I'm terrified of that. Like, so
Yeah.
because I always tell people I'm a little bit older than people. I feel like I am, young 50s, but going downhill, let me say it this way, falling is a real
Yeah.
fear, right? I'm 6'5". I don't want to fall. And so it's a long way down. And so going down hills, I'm always nervous of like, am I going to fall and just like eat it really, really bad, right? And so how do I, lean into it, but just keep pace down? And the way that I do it, I'll just kind of give my own answer kind of to my own question, right? Is the way that I do is I just try not to run fast. And so if I'm
Yeah.
going out on a flat course, and this is the way I tell myself too, if you can run on the road at different paces, then what's the difference on going a little slower? You're not having to brake by leaning into it to brake. You can just run at a slower pace. It is very
Mhm.
hard to do though. And so that's why I asked what the course was like. Because if it is a steep downhill, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable with that. I am going to break all get out, and I
Yeah.
will have no quads for the rest of the race. But that's just me.
Yeah. I don't know for you, but I find like as you're going uphill too, when you take the longer steps uphill, there's more energy. And the same thing, like when you're taking longer steps, that's downhill. That's kind of where I feel like I'm out of control and going faster than I want to go. So shorter steps, keeping them closer to your body. That's kind of how I help people
Yeah.
and
And
myself.
and arms out, man. If you start picking
Yeah,
up
you just
speed,
got to do
arms
airplane
out,
arms.
arms out,
That's
and
why I
just
don't do handhelds.
Yeah, yeah.
This is for balance only.
Hmm.
well, I mean, that is part of it, right? Like using your arms when you're going downhill. It's a different running motion. You're not necessarily going to run arms side by side like you normally run swinging, going on a flat area. So going downhill, you're going to have a little bit more gap in your pits as you kind of create some balancing. And we're laughing at each other, but you'll know I'm right. Like you do this, we kind of expand out like wings, and it helps with the balance. But
And my poles are usually going everywhere. Like if there's
you
somebody behind me, like I'm
you are
trying to see them, I
dangerous,
don't know. Yeah,
right? Or we could just break.
yeah. Nah, that's not going to happen.
We'll keep moving.
Yeah. So then it looks like when you're at the bottom at mile 50 and you know you have to turn around, that's like, I hate out in Basques because you're like, I just went, and like Jeff and I were talking before this too, as we were prepping, that the whole time you're going down, it would be in our head like, oh, I have to come back all the way up this, or like I have to see this whole thing again. Is that kind of going through your mind as you're hitting that 50-mile aid station, or?
A little bit, but I mean, I don't know. I think it helped to go out and learn the course, and just like stay in the very first mile, I want to say, said something that reminded me just to stay in the mile. Stay on the mile you're in, like enjoy, she said something, enjoy something, whatever. And that just made me, stay present, So for me, it was like more of excitement of like, I'm getting to this point that I know, and then I'm getting to the next point that I know. And, thinking the race being forward to the 50-mile and then forward to the finish. The section, I will say, from mile 44 to 50, 51.4 is according to my watch. I'm so rude. But was the hottest section. We were very fortunate with the weather. There was a little bit of a breeze most of the day, and it wasn't as hot as it's been, like maybe 10 degrees cooler than the past, which is like a huge, I think I said a little bit, that's a lot. But, for me, I had a sun shirt with a hoodie, and I never really felt like overheated. I started feeling hungry in that section. But when I got to the aid station, I like rejected everything. I was like, my poor friend, I had brought Uncrustables for a training run. And so she was like so excited to present me with this Uncrustable at the top, like, here's your Uncrustable. This is what you like. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm so sorry. Also, I'm a solar runner and I don't know where you got that. So I can't.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, I'm a rule follower and I am not getting disqualified for something that I don't even want. So I forced down a wrap with bacon and avocado, had a couple Cokes, so just use that to basically toss that down. And then I double fisted some Otter Pops on the way back. And that brought me back to life. There is a 0.8 mile climb to the turnaround, which, wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I was like doing it in training like 3 times. It's like, I'm going to die here, but doing Baldy a few weeks before that. And that's it's like 4,000 feet and 4.5 miles. So I did that, and then you get up to 10,000 feet. So I'm doing that, made that not feel so bad. But, I had, I guess, symptoms of heat without actually feeling like I'm hot. I'm just like, oh, I don't feel like eating anything. Like, I don't ever struggle with like, I would say like nausea sometimes, but not, to the point of losing anything, which is, I'm very fortunate for that. But I think the heat did affect me at that point, just in terms of like, nothing sounds good. I don't even want to drink water. At a certain point, I was like trying everything. I was like, this doesn't sound good. Let me try this. I had one bite of a pancake that I brought with me, and that magically turned on my thirst again. I was like, okay, let's drink.
You mentioned something also at the very beginning of this part that when Steve asked you about, were you second guessing the having to come back because it's an out and back and just being discouraged by the fact, oh my God, I'm going to have to climb all this up. But you said that you had checked the course out in training and stuff. And, for myself, I try to do that if I can. I try to get out to a course or get to a area that's similar to it if I can, that my race is going to be. Have you done a lot of your training out on the PCT itself to kind of prepare for the race? Were you intentional about that, or is that just near where you live?
Yeah, I mean, it's like an hour and a half drive. Part of the road is closed between the course, so the poor crew had to drive like the 2 hours around the mountain between miles 9.3 and 25. They had to drive 2 hours. It's like a 9-mile stretch of road that's closed. So to get to one point of the course, we would do like an out and back, and then get to the other point of the course, we would do another out and back, or park at one aid station, go one way, and then go the other way. So yeah, very intentional about, visualizing, getting the familiarity with the land. I also, wanted to maybe change my shoes. So I wanted to see how the shoes I wanted to do would act on the trails. The only part I didn't check out was the road section. It was mostly road because PCT is closed in some sections. So it's mostly road with some sections of PCT.
I think that's a great tip, to just try to emulate the trail or get on the course anytime you can, which scares the crap out of me for Mammoth, because I haven't touched any of that trail yet. And I have never run it before, so I have no idea what I'm in for. So you're
going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
It'll be great.
It'll be great.
It'll be great. A great suck. Yeah, exactly. And then, so like you said, you don't really usually have issues with eating or everything. So are you staying on top of your nutrition that whole time? Do you go by feel, or do you have like a timer or anything like that? Or
Yeah, I have a timer because especially late in the race, I mean, even as soon as like 5 hours in training, I'm like, it's time to eat again.
yeah.
Ugh. Like I could probably go 2, 3 hours without eating anything if I didn't have a timer. So I have it on every hour. And then if I feel like I need more, I'll look like, oh, it's like, 30 minutes till my next one, but I'm hungry. So I'm going to have a little snack. I was intentional about mixing gels with real food. So I had the pancakes. They're Dutch pancakes from Trader Joe's that I saw on somebody's Instagram, and I was like, I'm going to try that. And then I had these rice balls also, which one of my friends had told me about, and they're like beef bulgogi, but they're vegetarian or vegan. Yeah. So theoretically okay with being in the sun all day. So I put like one of those in every single one of my drop bags just in case. And then gels, I use carbs and then some e-gels sometimes. In the middle of the night, I had an SIS with caffeine. And then the carbs now has caffeinated. So, and salted. So, yeah, salt was interesting too. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
For Leadville, I ended up needing, based on like my training, 3 salt tablets per hour, in addition to a very salt heavy electrolyte beverage, just being at that elevation. Leadville's 9,200 minimum, 12.6 max. So, but in this training, like I found myself like not really using that many salt pills, which is surprising. So I just basically used my drink and had the rice balls are actually very salty. And then the carbs has some salt as well. I saved that for the hottest part of the day. I only had 2 of them left and they were like out of stock. So I was like, well, I'm out of luck. I think I maybe had like 2 or 3 salt pills all day.
Oh, wow.
Very surprising. But I mean, all the other stuff I had, like, I think made up for that. So yeah, and I was hydrating like crazy.
That's cool. I have 2 things I want to say. So we've talked before on the show with other guests as well about the importance of knowing or getting more dialed in with what your sodium needs are and everything. And people can get a test in the labs of what, their amount of salt loss they have per hour, or whatever it is, depending on their sweat rate and stuff. And so I've never heard, and this is going to be something I'm just going to have to do my own personal research on, the impacts of altitude on sodium needs. Now that's something that's new to me. But when you said, I was like, I wonder if there is an effect. It could be. And obviously for you, there wasn't. So I don't personally know. Steve, are you familiar with that yourself?
Yeah, I know you're supposed to be more hydrated as you go higher up in elevation.
Right.
So that would
still play into the same way then, I guess.
In with the sodium, yeah, because if you don't have that extra sodium in to hold that fluid for you, then you're just kind of passing everything through.
Yeah.
I like
I have a friend who just did the high lonesome race, and she actually, I forget what it's called, whatever it is, you have too much water. They told her to stop drinking water for like a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely need to have that salt balance in there.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. The other thing you mentioned, that for those that may not be aware, you kept saying that you also use carbs. And so a lot of people are like, yeah, we're all using carbs. Carbs is actually a product.
It's a brand.
Right? It's a brand. And so I just wanted to kind of say that so people who know, they're like, what's she talking about? Carbs is also a brand. You can get, I just picked up a couple to taste the other day. There's like, some of them are like 50 grams of carbs in a pack. Yeah. I like it a little bit. The flavor is just not as something I like as much as something like Sis or something like that. But 50 grams is a lot. It is a big pack, but it has got plenty of it in it. I tried their hydration mix. It was pretty sweet for me, but I like their gels more so. But it's a brand.
It was to them for trademarking carbs,
right? I know but I wanted to say it because when she said, I was like, yeah, we're talking about taking carbs, but people who aren't familiar with a newer product that's on the market called carbs, they may not know what you're talking about. But
and cool. My electrolyte drink is fluid. It's fluid nutrition.
Oh, good.
I have carbs and fluid. That's what I drink.
They're like, what? At least you're keeping it basic.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to say is we were laughing. We think you're doing awesome at your races, right? And we don't understand why you don't talk about them. Like you keep this quiet. You're very reserved. As you said early in the very, very beginning, you tend to be very shy and you don't like to put yourself out there. We have not really mentioned this fact, but this race that we're highlighting, you came in second place female.
As a solo runner.
As a solo runner, which is fascinating. Your time, you got your 30-hour goal time. You got this in 29 hours and I've lost my notes. I think 15 seconds. Is that right? 29 hours, 12 minutes. Yeah, 29 hours, 12 minutes, 55 seconds. Second placed female finisher. And you started out, it is crazy, but perfectly well executed because your goal was to start out slow, to be patient, to be reserved. And you said you were trying to stay with all these slow people, and yet you somehow got second.
I was looking back at the aid stations, and with the exception of maybe 2 aid stations, I moved steadily up in each one. Aid station 1, I was 20th. So my husband's watching me at home, and he was going to chill at home for a bit or whatever. And come in, he's like, I got to go. She's going to be there.
That is fantastic.
She brought her trophy. Wait till you see how big this trophy is.
I saw it before we started recording. Oh, yeah. Show it again for everybody else. See, go a little bit further towards Steve so we could. Yes. That's fantastic.
It's a hefty trophy for sure.
She's holding it with
both hands.
Yeah.
When I got it. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's. Woo.
Steve, she's not going to leave it there for you.
No, that would be the only one I would ever get.
Inspiration.
Yeah.
The only one I'd ever get by leaving. That's awesome. Yeah. Did you experience any lows in the race?
I would say only that, not wanting to eat. I was actually just telling my husband about this today. I was like, I'm kind of a little disappointed that I didn't have more challenges in this race. My blisters were annoying, and I had ways of dealing with it. I changed my socks and my tape when needed. I changed my socks like 4 or 5 times, just to stay on top of that. And I had the medic pop a blister one time and let him tape it up. But that was really my only, I guess challenge. Like, I didn't have like a low because of that. But yeah, the heat when I didn't want to eat was like, oh man. But I'll tell you what, I got back to the aid station at mile 57-ish. I had a burger and then I was good. Then I was chasing headlamps in the dark, like, yeah, that section from mile 75 back up to the top of Baden Powell that we were talking about, the gradual downhill. Yeah. So the gradual uphill at like 2:00 in the morning. I was like, it's go time. Yes.
Do you think
extra fuel?
Yeah, right. Do you think you ran that section so well because you started so patient in the beginning?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I did have I forget what mile it was where I was like, did I hold back enough? Oh, so I kind of was like, am I good? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I, in one of my past races, I forget which one, but I had a total of 700 milligrams of caffeine all throughout, from like when I started getting tired in the middle of the night to like the very end, essentially. And then of course I tried to take a nap and I was like, I can't. So what I did for this race, I had 100 milligrams at about 11 p.m., another 100 at 1 a.m., and then a 200 SIS gel at 3 a.m. And that was the last one that I had. And I finished at 10 a.m. So I was just fueled basically by passing people. And then the 2 girls on the trail 10 miles before the finish that said, you're second. And I was like, you mean like second solo, right? Like they were like, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, I was like, that's cool. There's probably still like 5 more ahead of me. It's so hard to keep track of everyone. I wasn't really focused on that. I just wanted to do well for myself, and just trust.
So did you not realize
the patience? I didn't even know that I was second, but I got to the last aid station, and I guess what had happened is the one who was in second got lost. And so they verified I was second overall. And I was like, how far back is she? Like, like, I don't think, I don't think you need to worry about her. And I was like, okay, I'm still going to worry about her, but all right. Yeah. I'm like, how far ahead is first? They're like, she's probably done. I'm like, fair. She had a bad race, like according to her. And she finished in like 3 hours ahead of me. She would have probably liked to finish 5 hours ahead in under 24 hours. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I mean, like, I just want to know, but like,
Dang, but second's fantastic,
Yeah,
oh, dude,
incredible.
I mean, this is a big race. I was like never expecting, and like I said, I like looked at the names of my friends who've done it before, and even my friends who were there, I was like, oh, she's going to be ahead of me, like, but I mean, you never know.
Yeah, for sure. So, how do you train for altitude? I touched on it earlier. So, how did you prepare yourself for the altitude?
Yeah. I mean, I went to Baldy like one time. I did one of my long runs. I did 8 hours at that same mountain range, but going up to like 9,000, doing a couple peaks in that range. We did from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. And so yeah, just doing that. And that was like a nice, easy effort, but just like being there, breathing, practicing the nutrition. That's where I learned about the rice balls. Thank you, Melissa. So yeah, I would say just on the course, and I trained a lot at Mount Wilson, which another local, it's like 5,700, I think. So not as high. um, yeah, I don't know why I didn't go higher, but I mean, I guess, I do okay at altitude. Like I trained a lot more at those higher at 10 and 11 for Leadville. I didn't feel like the 9,000 peak was like going to be, well, be careful. I didn't feel like it was going to be too hard. I didn't feel like it was going to be like, I guess, as challenging as I've done. So I was comfortable just to do that once in training and be like, okay, I feel okay up here. Let's push, at the lower elevations. So, and that's something I actually learned. My husband did some research for training for Leadville because I was like, I'm going to go to Mount Whitney where I had some stomach issues before. And like, I called it altitude sickness, but it was really just like bloatedness and just like general not feeling okay for like 11 hours. From 12,000 up, all the way up, all the way down. And we were hiking slow. So, I wanted to go to Whitney and like really push, trying nutrition and making sure I'm hydrated this time because that was like very early on into doing ultras. And he was like, no, that's just going to wreck your next week of training. What you need to do is do like 7,000, something like that, and just like go hard at that elevation. So for Leadville, I tried to do that at the Holcomb Valley 33 miler. And I fell on the course 3 times and then it was all dizzy on the uphill. So I didn't get to push, but I got to like have some lessons in that. I can fall and like press on and be okay. Yeah. And I can have like, the things that happen at altitude and just like, okay, pop a salt pill. Okay. A little more water. Okay. Now I'm fine, but I still can't push.
I'm fascinated by this.
The Holcomb Valley is a nasty 50K. I did it after you. I think we probably did it the same year, possibly. And I think you kicked my butt because I did it after my second Cocodona. I was like, oh, I got this. This is no problem. But it was a month after, so I'm going to pretend like that was the issue, not just my suckiness at running. But yeah, it's at altitude. It's at like what, 70, 60, 900 feet, like something like that. Yeah, around there. So you're sitting up at Big Bear Lake, and it's pretty technical and everything too. And it destroyed me. It was very hot.
I'm fascinated by this because everything that I've book learned on this topic of altitude, right, tells me you have to have some sort of physiological adaptation. It takes you anywhere between 48 to 72 hours. And so, when I tell somebody that's going to be running Leadville or one of these races that are averaging above 5,000 feet of elevation, I'm like, hey, let's figure out your timing of getting to the race. Let's figure out how you're going to get used to this and go through any potential altitude sickness. Do you live at above 5,000 feet of elevation already?
No,
I didn't think so.
So
how did Go ahead.
I was going to say what helped me at Leadville. I stayed in town. I did the training camp. So I stayed in town at 10,000 feet and I was having trouble reaching over for my water in the middle of the night. My pulse ox was like in the 80s, I was like, okay. But we did 3 days in a row of running. On day 3, we went up to the highest point and I felt the best I felt. I ate a granola bar at the top. I was like, okay. So day 3 is magic. Got it. So for the race, we went out like a week before. We did 3 nights at like 5,800, 2 nights at 4,800, and then we stayed at 9,200, like a half an hour away from the race. And I felt pretty good race day in terms of like the elevation. It's always hard to breathe, but.
I mean, Leadville just happened, this weekend that we're sitting on, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's people don't take it. I don't know if they are really that aware of the type of preparation they need to do for it. And so when you just described, at the training camp, being like couldn't even pick up your glass of water on the bedside table at night because your oxygen level was so low, like that's real. And people are thinking that won't happen to me. I'm like, no, it's going to happen to everybody. So it's good to hear that you do know that you had to adapt and that you did do that. Because when you first described it, I was like, how did you do this? Like, I don't understand this. So that's fantastic. Any other questions we have on?
I was just going to say, did you train for the heat at all too? Like, did you do any sauna sessions or anything like that?
I didn't actually do sauna. I thought about it, but by the time I was like, maybe I should do that, it was like the week before. I'm like, I've been feeling okay in the heat. So, yeah. And I did not use an ice bandana, which I did in training because the water going down my back got into my socks, got into, and then like, oh, blisters, cool. So I brought it in my pack just in case, but I never used it. I just wet my buff and just would like turn it to make it like, cool on my neck.
I want to switch gears just for a second here to talk about something at a higher level. Again, in our email that we send to everybody with some questions that we kind of want to learn about the guests before we have them on the show, We ask a variety of topics that we want to get that information on. And you mentioned a variety of problems in races, right? You had mentioned the extreme rocky downhills at the end of the Wasatch 2024 because they were tearing up your blisters, which we talked about that you tend to deal with a lot. You thought you might be too slow to finish. You also had one of your lowest moments at the Rio del Lago in 2021 when you had a pain in your shins and tops of your feet that was debilitating, and you had to walk the last 25 miles in pain. You also said you usually don't cry, but 3 miles from the finish, you had a sharp pain that made me want to have an emotional meltdown. So you had the Wasatch 2024, you've had the Rio del Lago, you've passed out at mile 24 of a marathon, like you mentioned earlier as well. How, Liz, do you keep moving forward when things are going wrong? Because you said you always finish.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. I think another way that recovery has helped me is just like the one step at a time. Like I can't think, I've caught myself thinking it even when I tell myself, don't think about this. Like I'm doing a 30-minute mile. I have 20 miles left. That's going to be 10 hours of this pain. Like, like don't think about that. I had a pacer with me at Rio del Lago, and I actually had her video me as I was having my meltdown just because I wanted to capture that. Like y'all think this is like some like, yeah, I just ran 100 miles, cool. Like, I am like not okay. But I was with her, I was just following her footsteps, just one step after the other. And I've done that with her in training too. Like when we went up the ski hit to Mount Baldy, that terrible one that I told you about. I was thinking like, I can't really do this, but I'm just going to follow her footsteps, follow. So that's what I did in the race as well. I was like, okay, you go in front of me. I'm just going to follow. Yeah, I don't know. The stubbornness. It's just like if I know I can do it, and I'm not that I can predict if I'm doing permanent damage. Yeah, I'm going to do it.
I felt that in my core when you said about 30-minute miles and you're like, this is going to take me 10 hours. And however many miles it is like whatever that number is. I mean, I think that's a real emotion people have when they're in that death march. They look at their pace. It says 25, 27 minutes. And you're like, oh my God, the math is just not mathing very well here. And I think it takes a little bit of specialness to kind of keep moving forward. I have DNF'd. I can't say what you two both have said. You both have lived to continue to move forward. And so I think it's a fascinating thing that you have the ability to keep moving forward when you do that math and somehow turn that thought off. Do you know how you do that? Is it something you practice? Is it something you train for? Like, how do you get to where you can take that thought, which you said you have, and somehow kick it out the door? Like, how do you do that? Yeah, isn't it? That's right. It should stump both of you because, right. But we all want to know.
But I mean, just that one step at a time, I'm going to get there. And I guess faith has a part to do with that as well. Like, I know I'm going to get there. It's not going to be as fast as I want it. I want it to be now, know? And then I guess I just think about also like, how bad do you want it? Like, do I want to quit here or do I want that buckle? Yeah, I want the buckle. I think, especially at Wasatch, we were talking about the blisters. And like at one point I was calculating, I'm not going to make the cutoff at this pace. But I was like, they hurt so much. I was using my poles and we were going through this rocky section. And I was just like, I can't like run this, But I was like, do I want to get the buckle today? Or do I want to come back? Oh no, I don't want to come back. Like, I am not doing this again. So that's another thing that propels me. Is it a little bit of ego? Maybe, like I have to prove something, but maybe a little bit of like, people are expecting me to do this, but I don't think that's really honestly much of it for me. Yeah. I think in my first one, the issue I had was like a glute cramp. I had to dig my fist into my glute, the right glute, because it was mostly a left turn. It was like a loop that went like all over, but there are a lot of left turns. I had to dig it in to kind of get it going for the last 12 miles, but that was the longest I'd ever run. And I was excited about every mile. So yeah.
But it sounds like what you do is you redirect your thought. And so I think for those of us who've DNF'd, it's because we've allowed that thought to be something that dominates and we can't shake it. Like we can't seem to get rid of that thought. It continues to kind of bring us down. But what you described is thinking new thoughts. You ask yourself different questions. And I think the practical advice there is that when you find yourself in that position where you are doing your math and you're like, I don't see how I'm going to be able to keep moving forward and we're spiraling, you kind of redirect yourself. with the different questions and different thoughts. I think that's actually the answer to kind of how you do it, even though you don't realize that's what you're doing, because you just do it. And I think that's the key, is that being able to kind of redirect the thought when you're there, so that you kind of give yourself something else to think about. And I think we can practice that in training. Steve, you and I've talked about that before. It's like things get hard in training. I just had a 20-mile run that was hot here yesterday, and it was only supposed to be an 18-mile run, excuse me. And there was a place I could turn, and I was like, I could just be done. I'm exhausted. I don't feel like doing this anymore. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just take this opportunity to just go another 2 miles, even though I don't feel like it. And I know I'm technically able to be done. So I decided to just add it on. And man, it was the best thing ever. Like when I got done, I was like, I hated it. Like I hated the fact that I decided to do it. And I was out of water. I was out of everything. It just made the last 2 miles worse. But when I made the turn to add those in, you kind of have to commit. And I thought that was a really good decision, and it was a way I could practice that change of mind of, I'm technically done. Or I can say, hey, you're feeling bad. Why don't you just push it and just see kind of to make it a little worse. Yeah. I hate doing that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I got to practice that in my training for Leadville at that 55 miler, which by the way had 21,000 feet of vert in it.
Wow. Holy crap.
And so I got to a point. So I got to a point where I could go on this nice fire road 3 miles down to my car, and it was 6 p.m. and the sunset was 6:30, and I had to get up at 3:30 the next day for work. And I started at 3 a.m. So I could just, nice down the road, I'm done, dinner, nice time for bed. Or I could do what I planned on. It was a race simulation, and do 12 and a half more miles with 3 more peaks, and then end on the 3-mile uphill road to get to my car. And so I just told myself, this is a race simulation. If I do that in a race that's a DNF, I'm going for the 3 peaks. We're going to do this thing. Yeah. Finished at 10:45 p.m. Got 2 hours of sleep that night.
I mean,
that was good practice.
I think, and again, I think that's the way that we all who are listening, and myself included, and not you two, because like I said, you don't DNF, but I think that's a way that that's how we can practice this mindset development. And it's one of those things that we don't think we can really ever practice. You're like, how do people get better at this? How do they do that? It's like, I think you should identify in your training when things are getting difficult, how to make it just a little bit harder, or to do whatever it takes to not cut a corner. Like, don't cut it short. Don't do anything like that. Even though it's tempting, like you're already there, you're already putting in the effort. Just see it through, add a little bit more, and kind of taste the crap, if you will. And so kind of just do that. And I think that's how we train. I think that's how we get through those difficult times in a race, because we're like, okay, I can do that. And I mean, I just think it's the way we do it. So,
I mean, that's the same thing. That's why you run faster during training, when you're training for a marathon or something, so that when you're running a little bit slower during your race, that it feels a little bit better. So if you're hitting those lows during your training, you already know how to handle it,
Agreed.
And there's one other thing is, and even as I was telling Katie, because she's doing the Tahoe Rim Trail right now, kind of as we speak, she kept saying, how am I going to do this? And I said, and I tell a lot of my clients this, you have to stop asking yourself how, and just do it. Just keep moving forward, because that's when those questions start to come in. When they say how, and you're calculating, I got to be out here for another 10 hours, another 20 hours at this. How is that going to work? That's when your brain says, well, it's not going to work. Or, and then you don't know, 5 miles down the road, you may come to a how because you're feeling better. But at that time, you're feeling like crap, and you ask yourself how, your brain's going to give you the out. So you just got to eliminate that out.
It's real fear, man. When that comes up, there's a real fear that gets in runners' minds because of the fact that they've done all this training and not everything. And for some reason, the whole race is starting to slip away. And they're like, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And there's a lot of anxiousness and anxiety that builds. And I think if you can redirect, like we talked about and everything. Liz, you're about to say something, looks like.
I'm doing
I can tell.
I remember. I had like a little circle in my head. Yeah. So, and something I've learned just, in general, and like a few people I think have mentioned it, is like, if you allow a thought in your mind to circle around, it keeps circling until it forms a groove. And then it's like stuck there. It's there. Right. But if you can kind of like kick it out of the circle, then you don't form that groove.
Yeah.
So I think
it's
that's
like redirecting.
Yeah. So redirecting, kicking it out. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. They say that's why our brains have so many grooves in them, because we developed habits, and that's what those are all. The grooves are habits. It's a little bit of possible truths about it. Who knows? We've talked about your faith. We talked about this robot mode you go into when you tend to be stubborn and everything. And so I do want to mention that up next you have the Mammoth 50K. You've got an Ironman in 2026 you're planning on, and then you've also mentioned to us that you're looking at possibly maybe one day thinking about considering a 200-mile race.
I should sign up right now. That's the best.
Well,
we can pull up Ultra sign up right now.
Not right now. Oh, my husband's gonna be so happy.
who would be
No,
your
so here's the
husband?
thing
You said?
about that. Yeah. I do want to I have a friend who wants to do Cocodona. I think she's doing the 125 next year. She's,
Nice.
I got to get an ultra sign up for her for that.
Yeah.
But it's like I kind of want to crew her first, or maybe we'll both put in for Cocodona and see who gets in, and that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know.
That's a great way to see it too.
Yeah.
And it's a great atmosphere. And
Yeah.
it brought a whole other perspective for me on the crew side to see it and what I could do better and where I could. Yeah, it's just a great way to experience the race and kind of learn for it.
Yeah. I want to figure out my blisters first.
That's probably a good idea. Everybody I've ever talked to that's done 200s, they have some tore up feet.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
You just deal with it.
Just got to learn to deal with it better. Yeah.
You got to bring the crew chief along. You'll be fine.
Yeah, there you go. His wife is the crew chief extraordinaire. All right. So, Liz, at the conclusion of all of our episodes, we do a segment we call Coach's Corner, where a question comes in from a guest, and they like to ask us a question that we answer online, or we answer in the show. We also invite our guest to be a part of it and also answer with us. And so this question comes in from someone who chooses to remain anonymous, which apparently is now an option. So if you have a question, you want to send it in, you don't want us to know and say who you are, then that's fine too. You can do that. The question is this. This is funny. It's about carbs. There is a lot of information regarding how many carbs per hour you should take. How do you figure out what the right amount of carbs per hour is for you? And how do you know when to change up your carbs per hour? In other words, how do I know if 45 grams per hour is right or 70 grams per hour is right? And I think the question is rooted in the idea that many runners hear podcast people talking about these different levels you should be getting, whether it's 20, 30, 40. There's elite runners that are getting 120 grams per hour. Like, how do I determine what the right amount is for me? And then when do I change it to figure out if I need more or less, something like that. So that tends to be the question. How do we want to begin? Because that's a big one. That's a lot to that question. Any thoughts on that, Steve? We'll go first, Liz, to give you some breathing room on this one.
I mean, the general rule of thumb on guidelines is, like you said, 60 to 90 grams of carbs, and that's a pretty big spread. For me, I found that, and working with some runners, some clients, is like, one, they're mostly underfueled. And if you feel like crap during or after your run, you're mostly underfueled. So if you're at, actually take account of what you are eating, because they will say they're at 40, but it's actually 20. Or 23 to 25. So if you're at 23 to 25 and you still feel like crap, then don't up it to 90. Do incremental jumps. Maybe try 40 or 50 and then see how that feels. And if you're feeling a little bit better, then make another jump and then dial it back. That's and it's unfortunately, and it's going to change per race, per effort too, really. If you're pushing a little bit harder, you may want to eat a little bit more or for longer. So it's all really trial and error, which is unfortunate, but you should really start to practice that at least on your longer runs for sure.
Yeah, I think that's interesting thing, because they do say the target range is 60 to 90. I've also heard it's like 45 to 60 as well, a little bit lower, but most runners, they are undershooting for sure. I think
near it.
Yeah, a typical GU pack, the brand GU, they're like 19 grams of carbs in a pack. And so a lot of people are like, well, I take a GU an hour. I was like, that's cool. You're like not even close. And so, but I say that in true respect, because it's even an area for myself. Like, I personally target 45 to 60 because I can easily get 45. I struggle to get 60 consistently through the course of the race. In the beginning, I can get it, but as the race goes on, I'm still trying to get at least 45. So what I encourage runners to do, at a minimum, if you're trying to figure out how do you go from one level to the next level, first thing you need to do is understand the current level you're at.
Exactly.
And honestly write it down. And if you're saying, well, I eat real foods and stuff, cool. you can find out what the nutritional breakdown is of those items as well, just to get the actual carbs you're taking in. And yes, if you tell me that you're getting your carbs in your drink mix, that's great and all. But if you're not drinking all of your drink during this hour between one aid station and the next, or however long it's taking you, then you can't really count all those carbs that you put in the thing because you didn't actually drink them all, right? And so understand your baseline and then begin to work your way up. When you reach a point, like how do you know if you got too many or whatever? We talked about this before, is if you feel like crap afterwards, you're probably getting either too much or not enough, but you need to start kind of toggling this around. And I want to push this back to you, Liz, a little bit, because you actually said earlier that you practice this in a 5-hour training run, like your nutrition and stuff like this. And so how do you practice your nutrition in a training run to make it relatable to a race? Because it's hard to kind of mimic 29 hours and, at AC 100 in a training run. So how do you practice this?
Yeah. Well, generally, since I did Leadville, I've been trying to get 300 calories per hour. And, I honestly haven't really counted carbs, but I'll just kind of listen to whatever my body wants. Like it wanted a burger at mile 57. Perfect. Carbs and protein, Yeah, I don't know. I do like that the carbs has it tells you, just right on there, and it's a nice round number. So if you're trying to get 50, just, have one of those. There you go. Not that you can tolerate that for 29 hours. I've had races where I'm trying to remember which race, that's carbs sounded good the entire time. So I pretty much did that, supplementing with other things. But yeah, I think I mostly go by feel in terms of I talked about how much salt, how much water, that kind of thing. If I'm starting to feel real low energy, I either need to be more hydrated or, feel more. If I start to have hunger pains, that's not good.
Yeah.
Which I did at AC, but that's what I solved with my burger. But yeah, just mostly going by feel is what I would say. But there's definitely something to getting that exact carbs dialed in and knowing what works and what doesn't. I feel like for me, there's some things I could probably figure out what makes my stomach not so happy. Because, while I don't have the nausea issues really, there's some times where I'm just a little bloated, a little, just, it's not great, could be feeling better. And that's probably due to whatever I have in my drink or my food. It's never been a big enough issue for me to really do heavy research on it. But yeah, I feel, and then, trying more and less. Measuring is good.
Yeah.
Don't always follow my exact example.
Well, it's interesting though, because just to kind of go a little further with this, you said you actually made the joke about taking the carbs brand pack of 50 grams of carbs in that per hour would be hard to sustain for the entire race because it's a lot. What I have found is that when runners are focusing on getting a certain amount of carbs through gels or goos and all this kind of stuff, or their hydration mixes, they quickly get palate fatigue, right? And it happens because it's so much sugar that they're kind of laden in their body that they just get over it. And so if you're going to explore how many carbs per hour that you need, you've got to come up with options that aren't going to exhaust your palate. And I think that's why a hamburger shows up in a race as being something that tastes pretty good compared to something else. I mean, I did the Canal Corridor 100 a couple of years back, and my favorite thing was a grilled cheese sandwich they had at some of the aid stations. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had. And I was like, I have no idea how many carbs are in this thing, but I'm having one of these at every aid station because it was just so different. Oh yeah. And it's because it's different than all the other sugars and I just think it hits differently for you. And so being able to spread that carb intake to different things other than sugary types of things will help prevent palate fatigue, because once palate fatigue kicks in, you don't want to eat anything.
Yeah. Toothbrushing helps that.
Yes. Okay. And you know why, right? Because of all the sugar we put in our mouth, we've got, teeth rot going on because of the fact that we're eating sugar. Since we've been eating gummy bears and M&M's since 8 a.m. Right. Since 8 a.m. at the first aid station we stopped at. This is just ridiculous. And so, that's exactly right. That's why we have that. But cool. Well, I got nothing else to ask you, Liz.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Okay. Can I just add real quick? My last mile was an 8:27.
Oh, that's incredible.
For the AC 100?
Yeah, I actually saw a girl coming hot off the trail, and I panicked.
She's like, nope.
She was catching up to. There was like a guy with his pacer that I wasn't worried about. I was like, okay, where's the girl? Like, so she like caught up to them real quick. They were like a block away before I could even blink, and I was like trying to, I was like, am I running like a 6:30 right now? Oh, you know, so, and I was just looking behind me or whatever. But like that, so that just, I was super happy with that, knowing that my patience paid off and I could run an 8:27 mile at the final mile. I was like, this is crazy.
Liz, that just says that you left a lot in the tank.
Yeah. 25 hours.
I could have been 3 hours faster if I just got
Next year, first place, better be wary of Liz Clarke.
man.
That's awesome. Liz, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We appreciate you so much. And I mean it. I'm grateful that you were flexible enough to be able to kind of hang out in the West Coast studio with Steve for us to be able to capture the story. Like I said, we knew the audio issues we couldn't get past before. And so the fact that we were able to reschedule this and make this happen, I'm really excited. I think you have an incredible story. I think you've got just an incredible journey you've taken just to get as far you've come through just your own sobriety, through your faith, just being evident of the work you've put in your races as well. And I think it's just very cool to see. So if somebody is interested in keeping up with you when you do your first 200, what's the best way they can do that? Is it through Instagram or something to that effect? Like, how can they keep up with what's going on?
Instagram. Yeah.
What's your handle?
Liz OTF. It's Liz OTF. Orange
Liz?
Theory Fitness.
Oh, that's right.
OTF.
Because you are an Orange Theory fitness coach as well.
Not a coach. I'm an assistant manager.
I must have misread my
Everyone thinks
right,
so. No, everyone thinks, they never see me coaching. They're like, you're a coach? I'm like, no. I do the workout all the time.
Awesome. But Liz OTF.
Yeah.
On Instagram. Fantastic. Well, Liz, again, thank you for that. If you're listening and enjoyed the episode, we would really appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, leave us a comment, something like that. In fact, you know what? If you didn't like the episode at all, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave us a comment that says you like the show. Just kidding. But we appreciate you for taking the time, downloading the episode, and taking us on your run probably. And so we appreciate that as well. And Liz, again, thank you for the time. Steve, my friend.
A very highly technical West Coast studio. So,
You are fantastic. I appreciate the flexibility, and your kids probably saying, all right, we won't be on the gaming system today. And so
I locked them in the room, so I got to go and lock them later.
That's awesome. All right. Well, for those listening again, thank you so much. And we will talk to you again soon. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.